Hi, I'm Nabila, and in today's video, I'm going to be walking you through my recent thrift flip, where I took a men's hoodie and turned it into a cropped drop shoulder hoodie. I'm going to be taking you through my design process, and I hope it'll help you think like a designer. Let's get into it. So here's the men's hoodie that I started with. It was a size large and the hem came down to about my mid-thigh, but it really caught my eye at the thrift store because of the striped panel that goes down the arm. And it's actually a French terry fabric where one side is gray and the looped side is white. So that stripe is actually just the other side of the fabric, which was pretty cool to me because I knew I could create another white panel if I wanted to by just flipping the fabric over. So the first thing I knew I wanted to do was to crop the hoodie so that it'd be more flattering on me, but I still wanted that pocket intact and I wanted to use as much of the rib as I could. So instead of cutting any of this off, which would have been faster, I just carefully seam ripped the pocket and the hem right off. The other thing I knew I wanted to adjust was shortening the sleeves and also dropping the shoulder. So I decided to seam rip the sleeves off from the armscye so that I would only have to sew back on one seam instead of sewing two seams together. And if you're seam ripping off any garment, it's a good idea to label which sleeve is your left and right just to save you the confusion. I had this hoodie in my closet that I liked the drop shoulder detail from, so I matched both the hoodies at the underarm and the shoulder seams as best I could. And when I'm doing this, I'm flattening the hoodies along the seam lines and paying attention to where the shoulder seam is for a really accurate pattern. And then I'm just taking my tracing paper and tracing the gap between the two hoodies where I want the men's hoodie to extend to without seam allowance for now. My piece of tracing paper was actually too small to trace the entire back section, so I just traced them separately and put them together on another sheet of paper. And I used a curved ruler to clean up all the curved lines so that everything was nice and smooth. So you'll notice I kept track of where that shoulder seam was so I can make a notch there. And it's important to note here that when I cleaned this pattern piece up, I also measured the armscye and the sleeve to double check that the seams would line up when I sewed this all together. And then when everything was finalized, I added my seam allowance. So to get fabric for this little pattern piece, I cropped the hoodie, except for I didn't get good footage of that. And then I also drew in a new curved side seam. And when I did this, I made sure to leave the armpit area alone since I already drew this new pattern piece for the sleeve drop panel. So I didn't want to change that pattern at all, so I just left it alone. And then I pinned everything really well so that everything was nice and flat before cutting it out, and I also made sure to account for seam allowance when I did this. So I used that portion of fabric that I cut off from the hem to cut out this sleeve drop panel. You might notice that the way I'm cutting it is actually off grain, but in this case I'm okay with that because this area will not need much stretch, and also I'm trying to use the fabric I already have. Next, I sewed the rib back on the hem and sewed the shoulder drop panel on, and this is how it looks. It might look a little funny right now, but trust the process. So I cut off part of the sleeve, and the nice thing about this being a drop shoulder means I don't need to have a rounded sleeve cap, so this can be just a straight line. Also, when I cut the sleeve cap off, I did measure this beforehand. I wish I got some footage of that, but please just trust that anytime I cut something off, I'm measuring it like 5 times over to make sure it's right. So now we're getting towards the end, and I just wanted to add a textural detail to the pocket, so I sewed on some pin tucks. The pin tucks also helped make the pocket a little bit smaller, which worked out great because it was looking a little too oversized with this new cropped length. When I was a little younger, I used to rush through projects to get them done, but as I'm getting older, I'm trying to lean into adding a special detail or two to a project at the end so I have a really unique piece that I'm proud to wear. So this is just an example of that. I really liked how these pin tucks came out, and here's the final product. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!